All right, welcome to another free real estate training video. My name is Jeremy Burgess, the Detroit Market Expert. And today we're going to be talking about something that confuses a lot of people, and you're going to see why it does. Value is very subjective, and I'm going to go through, and I thought of some. We have the insurance perspective from rebuild value, the appraisal, the broker's price opinion, the competitive market analysis, cap rate, which is more traditional with commercial, tax value according to what the state thinks your home is worth, and then something I call future value, which is most of this stuff's not very tangible. So this is for single family homes. I'm going on the record, this is for single family homes. That's what I do. Let's start with rebuild value. This is what your insurance company, when you call and you're looking for insurance, they're going to want to get a rebuild value. They determine this number based upon what it would cost today, from their opinion, to rebuild the home as is if the entire thing burned down. And this is expressed a lot of different ways. I'll give you this. I'm going to do a Detroit example because it's what I know, but you can do this for anything. A lot of times this isn't expressed in a price per square foot. Per square foot. Generally speaking, the industry, depending on, like if you're to rebuild this house today from scratch, it's anywhere from $100 to $150, per square foot, right? For example, most of the stuff I do in Detroit, the insurance company, when I insure it, they want to, I don't let them, but they want to insure, generally it's right around 180K rebuild value. Now, it's a high number. They want to insure it for the highest amount possible on the premium so they can collect the most amount of money possible. So your insurance company is going to tell you, we're going to say this is any house Detroit, $180,000 rebuild value. That's what they're looking at. That's what the insurance company wants to insure for. It's usually based on some sort of square foot, $100 to $150 per square foot, whether it's brick, frame, vinyl, aluminum sided, whether it has a basement, a garage, all that. But it's generally going to be based on some sort of square foot. So here's one value. We're going to go ahead and call this value 1 for any property, Detroit, Michigan. It's going to be your insurance, your rebuild value. Now we're going to come to the more traditional appraisal. Now I'm going to go ahead and say this is January 2012. This number is all over the board. Let's start with what an appraisal used to be. Before the real estate collapse, the appraisal is supposed to represent a transaction between a buyer and a seller that's not distressed, and generally speaking is a finance transaction. Somebody put 20% down, the other 80% is financed by a bank. There's a real estate agent involved. Those were what they were supposed to be using for what we call comps, comparables, other houses near your house that sold, and what used to be the last 180 days, and now that's changed a lot. Well, at least in Detroit, was an appraisal today. Well, appraisal today, since the entire market is distressed, and this is the kicker. This is why you get numbers all over the board. It's crazy. First of all, they don't want to finance anything in Detroit. Period. End of report. Single family home. They don't want to do it for multiple reasons. The risk, they learn the wrong lessons. A lot of them have minimum loan amounts, $50,000 the minimum loan amount. And that's finance. That's not what's on the purchase and sale agreement. That's actually what's financed. But when the entire market becomes distressed, meaning there's a significant number of foreclosures, short sales, basically homes gone bad, they came and they changed the rules. Now they're using what typically is in a traditional appraisal, what's not supposed to be a distressed sale, is not supposed to be included. When the entire market is distressed, it's included. And what this does, the appraisers that go out and do this, they don't know anything about rehabbing property. And much of the time, in my experience, when you're paying for an appraisal, they never even leave their computer chair. They don't leave. So they're not looking at the inside of the house, how much work it needs, houses around the neighbors, you know, whether one house is a burnout and for sale, one house is completely rehabbed and for sale, and it's completely 100% livable. One house has granite countertop and a new roof. They're not looking at that. So if you ordered an appraisal tomorrow in Detroit, you're going to get a combination of distressed sales, and that's going to give you a value. And there's a lot in appraisals, so we're going to go ahead and go from here. But we're going to go ahead and say, for this same house, $27K based upon this distressed value. But there's other appraisals. I think, what? There's only one appraisal. No, you just call up, ask for an appraisal, you're going to get this. Now we have FHA Government Program for first-time home buyers. They have their own specific guidelines. Now, I'm not going to go into the guidelines because they change like every 30 seconds on this, but these are some of the most conservative numbers you can possibly get. They want it to be within 1/4 of a mile, no more than 1/2 mile, within the last 90 days, a lot of times within the last 60 days, and they're looking at everything that's sold, all this distressed stuff. They don't care if it burned out, whatever. They're looking at everything. They don't want to cross major roads. They want to compare identical houses to identical houses, which is very complicated sometimes. I mean, we have 3 or 4 generations of homes built in Detroit over the last 100 years as the waves come in. But there's an FHA buyer, first-time home buyer, government program. And this is on a real property I did, by the way. I'm not throwing the address up, so I'm not making up these numbers. FHA came back with a value of $17K. Then we have a more conventional. Like, what's conventional? Oh, if I can spell. This would not be a government-backed program. This would be a small local bank will typically do these. Some big banks will do these. Credit unions will do these. This is more like your 20%, 30% down. They're going to find the rest. Their guidelines are going to be different. Sometimes it's more strict. Generally, it's a little bit more relaxed, and your relationship with the bank, how long you've been there, credit cards you have with them, car loans you have with them, is going to matter on what they do it, or whether they do it or not. But I had this one come back at 23K. Now, we can literally go down multiple appraisals. I mean, there's also, I get cash value appraisals all the time. Because there are the 2 kinds of sales. Sales that are financed, sales that are cash. The vast majority of deals in Detroit are cash, but you can also ask for a cash value. They can go and they can pull this information and say, okay, if I paid cash, what's this house worth? Yeah, it was the same. FHA and a cash value is the same. Let's go back up here and talk about appraisals too real quick. Appraisals are going to look backwards in time. They're going to do some projections, you know, based on what the market's currently doing. It's going down 10% a year, all that. They're going to make projections based upon whether it sold 3 weeks ago. They're going to calculate, okay, you're losing 6% a year in the market. You know, FHA's determined it's a declining market. They're going to make those corrections as well. But all of these, with the exception of one, is a look back in time. You know, we don't know if it's really going to be 180,000. We certainly don't know in 90 days what the value of that home is going to be. We can guess. We look at the market, but they're looking backwards in time. Now we have the BP, and this is from a licensed appraiser. So insurance company will send out their person. A licensed appraiser will send out theirs. They have access to the MLS. They have access to public records. The next one is BPO, broker price opinion. This is down and dirty and a fast comparative market analysis. It's very cheap to do. They typically don't even go look at the property. They're just going to pull some comps, some comparables, some stuff that's sold around to it, get it generally in the neighborhood, make a short-term projection on on what the value of that home, if you were to sell it today on the MLS. And you can also ask them another question. If I wanted to sell it in 30 days, 90 days, because obviously there's going to be a reduction the faster you want to sell it. Quicker, you're going to want to know that. So I can't remember this number, so I couldn't find it, but I did order one of these. I did not order a comparative market analysis, but real estate investors typically don't use this. Although I think it can be a good tool from time to time, especially if you're expanding into a new area. But this is from realtors. So your BPO is from a realtor. Your comparative market analysis is also from a realtor. Now, what you want to do, you just don't want to call anybody, any realtor. Most of them are useless, just like real estate investors are useless. 90% of them don't know anything, can't figure it out. If you told them there's $1 million under your chair, it'd take them a half hour to look under it, right? If you do this, in my opinion, is one of the better ways if you find the realtor who's most active in that particular area you're looking for. So you want to make sure this is very location specific. And you're going to, just like anything, they might know something about the region, but if they sell 30 houses in 5 square miles, they're going to know a lot about that area. That makes this comparative market analysis a lot more valuable than somebody who hasn't sold any homes in that particular area. They're just looking at the information. Because somebody has sold 30 homes in a year in that particular 5 square miles, they've been in the house, they've seen the differences, they know the days on market. Days on market is how many days was the house on market before it sold. I didn't order one for this particular house, but that's another value. This is one of my favorite ones, although it's still incredibly subjective. It's still looking backwards in time, but that's another way to value a home. If you go with this one, you want an agent who's worked in this specific location, this area, has lots of sales, not the listing agent, but the one you want what we call a buyer's agent, somebody that works with buyers. They have an intimate knowledge of the homes in this area, what they sold for, what the inside looks like. Incredibly, incredibly important. They're going to know all those details. Not everything is online. My absolute favorite way to determine value is cap rate. Like, what cap rate? That's only commercial. That's true. And can you directly compare a cap rate to a return on investment? No, but it's pretty damn close. When I'm looking at the value of a property, and it's also subjective to what your investment goals are and what kind of return you're looking for, I value a property on what it's going to make me cash on cash, or return on investment if it's financed. Thank you, Jeff, for pointing that out. I'm still going to use it anyway because I hate financing. But I'm looking for a cap rate. My cap rate on this property was 15%. And I'm looking at cash flow, call it return on investment, call it cash on cash return. There's more terms out there, I think NOI too, pointed out. This is what I use. I'm a cash flow investor primarily. Yes, I wholesale, but that's like my day job. I don't actually consider that investing. My cash flow stuff is what I consider investing. This value, your traditional cap rate, depending on who you ask, is subjective. 8% cap rate is good. So I'm saying 9% cap rate, 10%, wow, that's a lot of value. Cap rate. My personal opinion, it was on the previous video, I like 12 to 13. Anything above that I can get is kind of extra. And that's based on my previous video on how I determine that. But this is my favorite way of determining value because it's the least subjective. It is still subjective, but I can determine if rents are going up, rents are going down. I do land contracts, so I lock people into 10 to 30 year terms. They agree to it up front, so I know what it's going to be. This is my favorite way to determine value in a cash flow market. I'm not a flipper. I do wholesale from time to time, but this is the number I like to use the best. But we're still not done. Believe it or not, there's still more ways, and I'm probably forgetting some. here we go. This is what the state, and this is where we're really living in fairy tale land now. This is what the state thinks your property is worth. And see, everywhere we go, the insurance has an agenda. The appraiser, you know, they have an agenda. Believe it, they work for the bank, not for you. I don't care what they say. Your real estate agent probably doesn't have an agenda because you're paying them for a BPO or a comparative market analysis. Cap rate, there's no agenda there. You're figuring it out yourself. Use your own numbers based upon the previous cash flow and return on investment video I did. State has an agenda. Why? Because they like Texas. Nothing better than government. Like, there's nothing better. Favorite thing the government does is spend your money, right? Now, on this particular property, the SEV, which is basically state equalized value, at least in Michigan, this value that they give, they're telling me this property's state equalized value is $32,000, which means they're telling me the value of this property is $64K. Because they want to get as much taxes as humanly possible. And yes, you can fight this, and yes, you can get reductions, some small, some large, but that's not what the video about. And when I'm buying a property, I'm not counting on being able to reduce the taxes at that time. But so there's a value too. This value of all the values is the most useless value because it is the most subjective. They want the highest number possible, and you can see the difference on this particular property, any property in Detroit. They're telling me this house is worth $64,000. Where you come over here, the insurance company tells you it's worth $180,000. Several appraisals, you know, one for $27,000, one for $17,000, one for $23,000, one for $17,000. I didn't actually get a BPO, but it would probably be very similar to, you know, in this range. Same with the CMA. Cap rate, you know, if you think a 10% good, you can project that back and determine a value on the property, which if you did based on a 10% cap rate, would probably be $50,000. Rough math in my head, but based on a 10% cap rate, it's probably $50,000. I'm off maybe $5,000, too high or too low, but you know, that's a value. Here's your state imaginary value. And here's something, I'm actually going to dedicate an entire video to this at some point in time. Future value. Because I think it's important in this market that's obviously incredibly distressed. What is the future value? And this is not, you know, it's not as far out there as you think. We're not talking about voodoo or some sort of gypsy, you know, crystal ball, you know, looking into the future. There are some things you can actually look at. And I just want to introduce the topic. You want to look at prevailing wages. They're going up, they're going down. You know, right now, prevailing in Detroit, wages are very low, have been going down basically since 2001. And a lot of the people I sell houses to, they're dual working families. They both work minimum wage and they can still afford to buy a home. Based on prevailing wages here, a dual working family, and I'll actually do a video about this in the future and really break it down for you. Value I come up with is about 80K. So I'm, you know, like, oh my God, that's so high. Could I sell it for 80,000 today? No. If there wasn't government interference, if the market was allowed to correct, if there was financing available, basically if your aunt had balls and she'd be your uncle, when all this is fixed, I'm projecting, you know, this property will be in the 80,000 range based upon what people can afford. And I use 28% of net income at 8% mortgage interest rate. And I'll do an entire video for it, so don't ask questions on this now. So this is certainly based upon what people can afford. Also, and I don't recommend this, but you can look at government interference. Doesn't matter whether you think it's good or bad, they do it. So sometimes, for example, for a period of time, I took advantage of, the Obama money, up to 8K for first-time home buyers, credit back to the homeowner. That obviously created a short-term, it ran for a year and a half, spike in prices. Because whenever there is government interference in the market, whether you agree with it or not, depending on what they do, it can change the market. So when they started talking about it, and I'm like, there's a good chance they're going to pass this, I started thinking, how as a real estate investor can I take advantage of that? So this is future value too. And then I want to go ahead and tie in a theme from the rebuild cost. Rebuild. And this is important. I don't make an investment decision on any one piece of information that you've seen, but part of what's determining an undervalued market is what is the rebuild cost. And the rebuild costs on these homes are $100 to $150 per square foot. So if that's the case, and you weren't going to build a brick home, you're just going to rebuild a frame house made out of wood, these homes, if you were to rebuild them today, and there was a market, and there was financing, which I realize there's not, but sometime in the future there will be, you're going to have a value 100K to 150K. Yeah, this is not a science, this is more of an art, but I want you to, there's a lot of values floating around out there, and there's a lot of people selling property, and there's a lot of people, trying to take money out of your pocket, and there's a lot of different ways of looking at value. And you know what? I've probably forgotten some or haven't been introduced to some. There's probably 8 more different ways of looking at this out there. But I wanted to broach the topic on value and get you thinking about it. In my opinion, it's just my opinion, cap rate makes the most sense to me, but I want to know what other distressed stuff is selling for. I want to know that. I want to know this, because I want to be looking into the future as much as possible. Wages going up, wages going down, what's it doing? If wages go down another 10%, what's that going to look like? Are they going to be able to afford my home? Am I still going to be able to get the cap rate that I want if wages keep going down? Well, what's that going to look like? I'm in it for the long term. I'm in it for the cash flow. And there's one more we're going to talk about briefly. And we're going to do it up here. Can you see up here? Mm-hmm. I do a lot of this. My wholesaling business, I sell stuff. I pick the number based upon a return I think is fair for investors and the value I add. Like, how do you add value? Why are you willing to spend more on an iPhone than you are on an Android phone? Perceived value. They do things a little differently. They have good customer service. They have good warranties on their products. Everything about them, even though they don't play well with others, but if you have all Apple products, everything just kind of works. As a wholesaler or a flipper or even a cash flow investor, there are ways you can add value. You can rehab a home for those who don't know how. You can place tenants for those who don't know how. This list can literally go on and on. Maybe if you're a flipper, you can put in a heat pump. So you can, add value with energy savings. This is something I focus in a lot on. If you're going to get into the wholesale business or the flipping business, you're going to need something that's going to differentiate yourself from others. And the easiest way for you to do it is the value added method. Because not everybody wants to be Walmart. That's how most people get into this business. Cheapest, absolute cheapest possible, the Walmart version. In my opinion, whether it's in real life, your current job, or real estate investing, that kind of model, you know, your Walmart model, is a race to the bottom. And you can see it too, all the time. 1 year after a new phone comes out, you know, it's worth half as less. 2 years, they're giving it to you if you sign a 2-year contract. 3 years, you can't sell the crap on eBay for 20 bucks. You know, there's time value, there's you know, a knowledge value, energy value. It's literally limitless. So this, you know, the value added, the value's added in multiple different ways. You can sell property at premiums or higher than a lot of these other numbers because you can do these things, whether it's another investor to a homeowner, because you added value that they see value in. And that's important. It's important to put out, because I think if you would have said 6 years ago somebody's going to pay $800 for a tablet to play Angry Birds on, you would probably laugh. Yeah, but literally tens of millions of people have done it. They can't even build this stuff fast enough. You know, if you would have said 40 years ago that somebody was going to pay 40% more for a car that runs on electricity, I mean, they would have laughed you out. You know, times change, things move forward, different people see value in different ways, and you know, if you can, think more from the value added. Now, I do want to say something about value added too. Two-tone paint's not value added, folks. Value added is not something you can do quickly, generally speaking. A value added is hard, and typically you got to put more value into it than you actually get out of it. So it needs to be something challenging that not that many people know how to do, or not that very many people do, but it does require effort on your part. I see people all the time, well, it has two-tone paint. Well, you want $5,000 more for your property because it has two-tone paint? Sorry, I can hire somebody for $1,500 to paint the house with two-tone paint. That's not value added. You know, tell you what value added is though, put in a heat pump. Yeah, they can go out and get it done for $15,000, but it's already done. They don't have to dig up their yard. They don't have to do all that stuff. Can you get $25,000 for a system that only costs $15,000 to install because you did it ahead of time and they don't have to worry about it? Abso-freaking-lutely. That's more value added. But anyway, back to the original premise. Value is very subjective. It's all over the board, depending on the area you're in, how many distressed sales you have, whether they're financing or not. You have a lot of investor activity. How desirable the location is, whether you add value, if you're looking at cap rate, you're looking at wholesale, you're looking to flip. It is a confusing subject because there's so many different values. Quick recap, I do like to know this distress number because this is my eject seat, basically, my oh shit, I need to dump and get out. You're always going to take a loss when you do that, but you still want to know what that loss is going to be typically. I like cap rate a lot. I like adding value to things, more value than I get in cash return, because it's a good way to get rid of stuff, and I like looking into the future. In fact, I'm typically not going to do something if I don't feel comfortable with this number. I don't like this number. I want to be able to add value, maybe in the form of seller financing too. That's a good point. Seller financing is adding value. And then I want to be comfortable with what I think the future looks like. You know, it's not all crystal ball. So that's my 2 cents on value. Some of these things in the future I'm going to break down in a lot greater detail. I could literally spend 8 hours talking about this. I mean, it's so complex, but I just want to give you you know, okay, value, I don't understand why the appraisal is this, or the BPO came back as that, I don't understand. Well, here's why. You got a lot of conflicting interests. Most of these people aren't looking out for you, generally speaking. Everybody has a different agenda. There are multiple ways of looking at it, and depending on where your market's at and the risk banks want to take, it's going to be all over the board. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them down in the comments. I really appreciate you watching. My name is Jeremy Burgess. I'm a Detroit market expert. Catch you guys on the next video.